15 years ago, I made a classic cauliflower gratin right here on America's Test Kitchen. Lightly blanched cauliflower tossed with a delicate Mornay sauce, laid in a pretty dish and topped with buttery breadcrumbs. And I still love that old recipe, but time has moved on, and so has cauliflower gratin, hasn't it, Tim?
That's right, Julia. Most people really love gratins for being rich and heavy, but I don't really think that has to be true for a gratin to be good. In other words, it doesn't really have to be a gut bomb.
So you're talking about a modern gratin here.
Yeah, kind of an update. So I've already prepped one head of cauliflower. This is another head, so that's a total of 4 pounds of cauliflower. We want to remove these outer leaves. Now these leaves themselves are edible. I like them in salads, but for our purposes, they're gonna color the gratin a little bit, so we wanna leave them out. Now, start by taking out the stem, and we're gonna core it. Take a paring knife and insert at an angle, and I just run my knife around, using the board to keep it stable, and then you've got a nice core. So we've got our core, and we've got our head. And one of the things about cauliflower that's challenging is that it has really hardy stem parts and some tender florets, and those two things cook at different rates. So we can have the core as part of the stem bowl, and then we'll have a floret bowl. I'm gonna halve this core, and I'm just gonna go in and thinly slice it.
And you're leaving those little pale green leaves on, and that's okay.
That's okay. We just don't want a lot of them in there. We found that the best way to break down a cauliflower was actually to slice it. So you wanna get these 1/2-inch steaks as best you can. And I should preface this by saying it's gonna get really messy.
It always does. Cauliflower just explodes when you start cutting into it with those little bits everywhere.
Just trust in the process. So I take a steak, and we're gonna trim these florets right off. So we get 1.5-inch pieces. And I just take a paring knife, and I just run my knife across. What's great about that is that everything is relatively the same size. But because it's all the same size, it'll cook at relatively the same rate. And you can just kind of break up these however you want. It doesn't have to be perfect, but relatively the same size is what you're going for. So now we have these little stem bits, and you want to go in and just thinly slice. You don't have to have immaculate knife skills or anything like that.
But you actually do have immaculate knife skills, and I love watching you chop. He has a very good claw. And by claw hand, I mean the non-cutting hand is holding the food steady by keeping his fingertips out of the way so they don't get nicked by the blade as he chops. You have a very fine claw hand.
Oh, thanks. It's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. All right, so we've got our stem mixture, and we've got our florets. The stems, we're just gonna cook them in 3 cups of boiling water. On its own, it's not enough to make a sauce, so we're gonna go in and add a couple more cups of the florets. Got 6 tablespoons of butter. This isn't a very heavy gratin, but you need some of that richness and subtle sweetness that butter provides. We're gonna bring it up to a boil, and while that's happening, I've got a steamer basket. We tried all sorts of stuff with florets. We tried boiling, we tried roasting, but the best thing to do was just to steam it. Let's just not jostle that or anything. So this has come up to a boil, so we can drop in our florets. We cover it. We're gonna reduce the heat to medium and cook these florets for 10 to 12 minutes until they're nice and tender.
Sounds great.
So it's been about 10 minutes. We're gonna give a check on our florets.
Ooh, it smells cabbagey.
So I just take a paring knife, but you could use a toothpick, and it inserts super cleanly, little resistance, so we know it's ready to go. So we're just gonna remove these florets, drain off as much of the liquid as you can, and then we'll transfer it to our bowl. Like I said, these stems take a little bit longer to cook, so we're gonna keep them going over low heat for another 10 minutes. While that's going, we need to make a little crispy, crunchy topping for our gratin, because who doesn't love that? So I've got 2 tablespoons of butter melted and a 1/2 cup of panko. Panko's great. It gives a nice, fluffy, crispy texture. And I'm gonna cook this over medium heat, and this will take about 3 to 5 minutes until it's nice and golden brown. So it's been about 10 minutes. Let's give a check on our stems.
It really does smell cabbagey. I mean, it is part of the cabbage family. And Mark Twain famously said that cauliflower is just cabbage with a college education.
Did you really say that?
He did.
And as you can see, you can just mash it down with a fork. It's just pulverized. I'm gonna take a ladle, and we're just gonna go in. We're gonna go ahead and blend this, and this is really hot, so anytime you're blending really hot foods or liquids, you want to make sure this is on really tight. And you also don't want to fill this blender top more than 2/3 full because it's kind of just going to build pressure and explode. For some seasoning, we've got 2 teaspoons of salt, a 1/2 teaspoon of pepper, a 1/2 teaspoon of dry mustard powder, 1/8 of a teaspoon of nutmeg, a pinch of cayenne, and a 1/2 cup of parm.
Oh, hello.
Well, parm gives that salty richness that we really need in this gratin, but it doesn't make it like too heavy or gloppy or stodgy. So we'll give this a nice whir. All right, so that's been about a minute. As you can see, it's pretty smooth and creamy. But on its own, this is a bit too thin to coat the florets, so we gotta tighten it up a little bit. And the best way to do that is just to add a little cornstarch slurry. I've got right here a teaspoon of cornstarch and a teaspoon of water. And we wanna do this right now because if we had mixed it earlier, it would have stuck all together in the bowl and it would have been hard to get out. So we're gonna have the blender running for like a minute more. And while it's running, I'll add in the slurry. The sauce goes right on top of our florets.
So it has lots of sauce, but it's not a fatty sauce, thanks to the cauliflower.
We'll just toss these.
And I like how you're handling them very gently because they're already partly steamed, and if you handle them too roughly, they'd break apart.
We're just gonna transfer to a 13x9 casserole. Go in and smooth this out a little bit. Remember those panko crumbs that we toasted in butter? We're gonna add a 1/2 cup of parm because parm and panko is a classic combination. We're just gonna go in and sprinkle over the top. So that looks pretty good, right?
It looks terrific.
And all we gotta do is finish this in the oven to let the flavors kind of marry. This is gonna go for 13 to 15 minutes in a 400-degree oven until it's nice and bubbly.
Making a velvety smooth sauce out of cauliflower is a pretty good trick. And the reason it works so well is because of cauliflower's lack of fiber. All vegetables contain both soluble and insoluble fiber. Now, the soluble kind breaks down completely during cooking, but the insoluble kind does not. Now, cauliflower is low in fiber overall, and only half of its fiber is insoluble, which means it purees nicely into a silky smooth sauce without having to add any cream. Oh, goodness. Tim, that's gorgeous.
It's just barely browned around the edges.
She's a real modern beauty. She also looks incredibly hot.
Super hot. We wouldn't want to get into this right now. We gotta let this sit for 20 to 25 minutes, and that lets the starches really set so that you get a nice, rich consistency.
All right, you've had me wait for 20 minutes.
Yeah, and it's time to eat. All it needs is just a little sprinkling of chives. So you'll see this is thickened up pretty nicely.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it smells good. That sauce has such depth of flavor. The cauliflower really comes through.
Yeah, it's got a nice balance of flavors. It's got sweet, salty. You've got that panko that's crunchy, and perfectly cooked florets.
Well, I think we're all used to cauliflowers with lots of cream and richness, but this one is really lovely. It's light, it's fresh, but it still has that depth of flavor. Great recipe, Tim. Thank you.
You're welcome, Julia.
So for this modern recipe for cauliflower gratin, use both the stems and the florets. Cook the stems until they're very soft, then puree into a rich sauce. Add the florets, sprinkle with toasted panko, and there you have it. From our test kitchen to your kitchen, a wonderful new recipe for modern cauliflower gratin. Good stuff. Thanks for watching America's Test Kitchen. What'd you think?
Well, leave a comment and let us know which recipes you're excited to make, or you can just say hello.
You can find links to today's recipes and reviews in the video description.
And don't forget to subscribe to our channel.
See you later.
I'll see you later.